Hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on misplacedstraws.com where music comes to life. And my guest today may not be a name that you recognize, but you surely know his playing. He's best known as the bassist for Slash featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators, but now he's gotten together with a couple of friends to form a new band called Heroes and Monsters. Their self titled debut is out January 20th, and it rocks. Please welcome Todd Kerns. Welcome, Todd.
Hi, everybody. How are you, brother?
Doing great. So, I mean, there's a lot to talk to you about, but before we get into the record, let's start with the band.
Sure.
Yourself on bass and vocals, Steph Burns, who many know from his stint with Alice Cooper on guitar,
hmm
Will Hunt, who's currently in Evanescence, but literally has played with everybody on
Yeah,
drums.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
How did the three of you get together for Heroes and Monsters?
Well, it's one of those weird things. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the lockdown. I mean, being sort of, everybody just being not operative, like just sort of like sidelined completely. Will was a friend, and he just sort of reached out one day and said, "Hey, me and my friend Steph are doing this thing. What do you think about knocking some ideas around?" And it was like literally, yeah, absolutely. I none of us knew if we had another month of sitting around or another,
Mhm.
well, literally another year. I mean, it was like, so we just started kind of knocking ideas around, and the first thing that came together was Locked and Loaded,
Mhm.
and that came together great. And then another one comes together great. Another one is okay, but we should do this. Then just the process starts to kind of present itself as far as writing and making a record. And the next thing you know, you've got a record on your hands, and you're like, wow, this is crazy how this happens. I mean, I'm making it sound too simplistic, but it was just enjoyable and fun, and came together so painlessly that it was kind of a no-brainer to just go for it.
And what is the creative process within the band? Like, did you bring songs to them? Did they already have stuff? Was it all new that you guys worked on together?
They definitely had worked up a few things before I came along. um and a lot of it was sort of like me playing catch up, and then adding my you know me bringing the potatoes to the potluck, whatever you want to call it. And but I mean, it was such an interesting process, and I think that's the funnest, the most fun when it comes to being collaborative, is to collaborate. And I think that that's sort of in certain projects, it's if I make a solo record, that's really satisfying getting to do my own thing, because that's what you do in a solo project. When you're just performing on somebody else's record, that's fun because it's you just playing on their record. And with this, it was sort of like there's three big personalities with ideas, and you just sort of knock them around, and the ones that work you keep, and the ones that don't fall by the wayside. And that's just sort of the way it goes. Yeah.
And the record sounds great. Who produced it? Because the sound on it's perfect.
Well, technically, it's like a co-produced, the group co-produced kind of thing. But Will had a big part of it. Alessandro had a big part of it. It's one of those things that, yeah, it just they did such a great job of that. It's honestly not my forte.
Mhm.
When my production ideas are more from an arranging and how things kind of come together way, but the actual sonic aspect, I don't look to me.
It,
I benefited from being surrounded by talented people.
one thing I really love about the record, it's 10 songs, it's 40 minutes, there's no filler. Every song hits exactly how you want it to. And there's just been so many records lately that are like 75 minutes long, and you're sitting there thinking this would have been a great 40-minute record.
Right, right.
When you guys were putting these songs together, you mentioned how, some worked, some didn't. Did you go in with kind of an idea of what you wanted this record to look like, or did it just come out that these are our 10 best songs?
I think it's interesting that you say that, because I really do feel like it's quite diverse in its own way. Like, I feel like if we had sort of carved it down to be 10 songs that kind of sound in a similar vein, I mean, like where you basically have a record of 10 songs that are just 10 different versions of the same kind of
Yeah.
song. I don't think that's quite as interesting as having it sort of bob and weave in and out of a couple of different areas. but I think that that's part of the fun of, sort of arranging a record. And, like every band you can think of has had the idea of a shorter record is sort of it has become sort of an ongoing conversation. Even with the last Slash record we did was 10 songs. We started to kind of think about, the records that we came up on, back in the vinyl days, it was the idea of, like, some of the Van Halen records had 8 songs,
Yeah.
10
They're like
songs,
a half hour long. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, and how can you have filler on a record that's just like that, that brief? But I just felt like less was more. I think that we kind of have leaned into that. And we'd written a bunch of other songs that not so much didn't make the cut, but we just kind of felt like, let's just make a more succinct record. As you mentioned, it's kind of like, I don't know if you remember, but I remember in the 90s and early 2000s when people really liked to lean into the amount of music you could put on a compact disc became kind of like, we're going to do 17 songs. And most people kind of were familiar with the first half of the album and then kind of went, just kind of just gave up or whatever. And to me, it's kind of more like the records I grew up on, Destroyer, or, like whatever, Led Zeppelin 2. It's like, those were brief records, and every single song is as important as the one before it and the one after it. And I think that that's kind of what we tried to attempt to do with this record. So hopefully it kind of comes across.
Well, it's funny because you started that answer. The first thing you said was the diversity in the songs. And if you look at my notes right here, literally the first line of this question is, there's great diversity in these songs. So, nothing sounds the same. It's very fresh. It's very modern, but yet your influences are there. Let's Ride It, to me, has such a Queen feel to it. I just love that.
Mm-hmm.
The opening riff on Break Me is right out of early Kiss.
Right.
For a new band, I think it's tough because you want people to know where you came from, but you don't want to be derivative of those influences. And I think you guys balance that really well on this record.
Yeah, I think it's important to, there was a period there, like, post hair metal, where everybody was terrified to even flirt with the idea, like when it became a dirty word, And I think that we've come so far the other way now, where I kind of feel like there's nothing wrong with flirting with, like, showing that, like, there's elements of that and classic rock and elements of sort of what you would call sort of more modern rock. I think it's all kind of like, in a lot of ways, I feel like there's no rules anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I think that we should be allowed to kind of just make music and kind of feel like, it's sort of all from the same pot of gold chocolate box. So you kind of go, what's this one going to be? You don't know. You're kind of, it's sort of, like there's even like tiny sprinklings of sort of proggy ideas here and there that is more those guys than me, because I wouldn't have the foggiest clue how to do that. But I think that that's kind of important to me, to, like I said, like, to not have 10 songs that are 10 different versions of the same kind of song. And it's a bit more of a journey, a bit more of a ride that way.
But I think one of the biggest compliments I could give the songs is that as you're listening to them, even for the first time, you immediately start singing along with them. There's a familiarity in the melody that grabs you. And when the record's over, they're still going around in your head. And I mentioned your work with Slash, and I think Slash and Myles are really masters of that idea of melody, of those songs that instantly sound like you've been listening to them your whole life, but yet are brand new. I mean, what did you learn from so much time with them that you were able to bring to this record?
That's actually really interesting that you say that. I don't even know if I'd be able to say what I've learned, because I think it's such a, you've been living with it for, I've been living with it for going on 13 years. So I don't know that it's really something that I could actually even probably put into words, but it's, clearly it's, it's in there. I think that, but it's also, a big part of what, the music that I love, in Cheap Trick and Queen and the Sweet and all the bands that are like so song oriented and hook oriented but still aggressive, and and you can crank it up in an old Chevy Nova on a back road somewhere. That's kind of where it all comes from to me. And I think that there's really sort of no reinventing of any wheel per se, because it's sort of like we all love rock and roll, and rock and roll is sort of a reinterpretation of something over and over and over again from 1950 whatever till now. So like, but at the same time, I think that there's still something, a new way to say it. You know what I mean? I think that that's sort of the way we've tried to do that, and I think that I think we've been relatively successful at it, if I must say so. I think that, looking at guys like, when I'm working with these guys or working with these guys, it's sort of like there's a way that guy works. But when I go over here, that guy's doing something I would never have thought of or would never expected, because these people think completely different than one another and think completely different than I do. So that's part of the collaborative effort as well, is that sort of like, wow, it's sort of, you just never know what's coming at you, for better or worse. Sometimes it's like, yeah, that's, that didn't grab me, but 9 times out of 10, when you're working with people who are talented and people you respect and admire, good things are going to happen.
Yeah, and I find it interesting too that the record's coming out on Frontiers, and you mentioned Alessandro Del Vecchio when we were talking about the production of it. And usually Frontiers bands are usually more on the melodic side as opposed to straight ahead hard rock. And there's kind of that formula that, with Alessandro and Aldo Lenobile. When you brought the band to them, was there kind of a give and take of, we as a label kind of do things this way, but you guys say, well, our band kind of goes that way? How did that work together?
It didn't seem to be too weird. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's kind of like, I think that I can't speak for them, but I think that they do what they do so well, and they don't need any help from me to do that. That they do it so well. But I think that having something like a slightly different, color in their palette just kind of makes it kind of like an interesting new take on things. And I think that, everybody's a rock and roll fan, and everybody's a song fan, and everybody's a music fan in that whole collective, including us, that it's sort of like, a respect for, that kind of music and that band and that artist and this band, and then Heroes and Monsters, what I mean? So it's kind of like, I think that, you can tap your toe to that and bang your head to that and pound your fist to this. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's sort of like, I think that we fit in there, maybe in a slightly different category, but it's still rock and hard rock and that kind of thing. And that's, I'm it's funny that you bring that up. I kind of like, I'm so oblivious to, like, I never really thought about, like, are we the redheaded stepchildren of this entire label? I don't know.
I mean, at the end of the day, a great song's a great song.
Exactly.
Wherever the feel of it takes you.
Of course. Yeah.
Do you see Heroes and Monsters hitting the road at all?
We're doing an Italian run in February. Mm-hmm. It's another one of these classic examples of Will's extremely busy, Steph's extremely busy, I'm extremely busy. Can we find a moment to do this? Can we go to February and do this couple of things that come up? Wait, now it's 3 things. Now it's 4. Now it's, it starts ballooning, and you go, let's do it. So yeah, we're going to go out and try and, run it up the flagpole and see how it goes. And then, when the next window of opportunity comes up, maybe we can do something there and something at another point. You never know. It's like, we can make these things kind of work. A lot of the time with some of these projects, I have quite a few friends that do projects, like these sort of get together, different guys getting together in different bands and recording songs, and they never have any intention of playing. They kind of like, they make records and they're like, it was just a fun recording project, but they're never going to take it on the road. So the fact that we're actually kind of taking that next step is sort of like the next, the next step to see if the first step was seeing if we could even write songs together. The next step was kind of seeing if we could put a record together. The next step was sort of compiling that into a thing and releasing it, and now getting together and playing music live. That'll be the next sort of adventure.
And kind of switching gears a bit, you're always known in your credits as Todd Dammit Kerns. Where did the nickname come from?
Well, Todd Dammit rhymes with God Damn It. That's basically where that came from. Is just a silly old nickname that kind of grabbed on. Vinnie Paul from Pantera used to use it all the time, and then then Slash started just introducing me as that, and that just became the thing. I was like, okay, well now, now I'm this, it's sort of, it's a funny thing. And then there was a t-shirt, and that became an entire enterprise unto itself now. So it's one of those weird things that just kind of like, it's like, to me, I'm just Todd Kerns. But that thing gets wedged in there, and you're like, okay, here we go. Yeah.
Now, I mean, you're proud Canadian, and everyone knows the classic Canadian bands. You have Rush, Triumph, Honeymoon Suite, Bryan Adams, but Canadian bands get so shortchanged here in America, especially rock bands. There's some great ones that just never get their due here. Coming into 2023, what Canadian rock band should we all be looking out for?
Well, as far as modern groups go, I would be a little bit lost because I haven't lived there in, 15, 16 years. So a lot of the newer music that's coming out of there, I am so like, people say, what about this? What about this? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of great old bands people should look out for. Streetheart is a band that came together and then broke off to become Loverboy. Certain members went off to be Loverboy. But Streetheart was just a great rock band that I love to this day. There's a lot of bands that you should check out. But there's so much music cranking out of there all the time. My kid has a band called Pack Rat. Check them out.
Definitely. We'll give them a plug.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, this record comes out January 20th. What else you have coming up this year? You have stuff going on with Slash, some of your other bands. What do you got?
Took has a bunch of stuff going on. I'm sort of like, it's such an interesting year that way, in that when I'm home, I play in a show here in Vegas called Raiding the Rock Vault with guys from Heart and Dio and Whitesnake, and we have fun doing that. And then Took is always doing stuff. We have new music on the horizon. We have the Bruce Kulick Band always has things going on. The non-makeup Kiss years that we celebrate. The Slash thing will eventually fire up. It's such a funny old ship that has to kind of, get the barnacles off the hull and get back in the water. But it's, we all got really crazy busy with our obligations from 2020 that all kind of got, stuck in the mud, so that when the doors opened in 2022, we all got kind of sidelined by it. We put out a new record in just about a year ago. Not quite, but that sort of didn't get quite the amount of love it should have gotten, only because we could only do so much before everybody got sidetracked and everything else. But that will eventually find our way back to one another as well. So it's a very interesting year. It's incredibly busy. Last year was a year where I was supposed to, never work again. A lot of people were like, we're never working again. We're never touring again. And all of a sudden it was the busiest year of my life. So I'm kind of treating this year as just like more of the same.
Well, we've been spending some time here with Todd Kerns. The band and the record are both called Heroes and Monsters, out everywhere January 20th. Can't recommend it enough. It's a great record. Now, I do have to ask, if the record does well and the band really takes off, will you eventually change the name to Slash, featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators with Todd Kerns?
Slash featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators and the Heroes and the Monsters. And yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah. But you never know.
Thank you so much, my friend. It's a great record. Hope to catch you on the road sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.